What's going on, guys? I'm here with Franklin and Abdi from FKC Legal. This has been a long time coming. Basically, we're talking about all kinds of legal stuff. I'm here with Kai as well.
What's up, guys?
And you know Kai's going to ask all the good questions. And there's all kinds of legal stuff that we're going to talk about. And I just want to welcome our guest, Franklin, here.
Hello. Hi, guys. How are you? My name is Franklin, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Ryan, and thanks, Kai.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abdi, and nice to have you on board. Thank you.
Cool. And we got Kai.
What's going on, everybody? This has been long awaited. I've been talking to Ryan about possibly getting legal protection or legal representation here for quite some time. We are people that are coming to this beautiful land called Kenya. We're trying to invest here, and I think it makes sense to get some legal representation. So I'm glad that Ryan invited me onto his wonderful show so we can talk to these brilliant lawyers here about the business of how you conduct yourself out here in Kenya.
I've already talked to Franklin a little bit, so I'll let you guys have some context about what Franklin and Abdi do, and we'll get right into it. So can you give us your business and what you guys do?
Thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you, Kai. I just want to pick it where Kai stopped. So when you come to Kenya, you want to come to this beautiful land. And among many things, we have some of the best national parks. We have one of the best weather. We don't have summer, we don't have winter, we just have beautiful sun throughout the year. But when you pay us a visit, you may also just want to have an investment. And one of the biggest things that you always think about is what is the safety that my investment has. That's exactly where we come in. So we come in as investment lawyers. Our name is FKC Legal, specifically and specialized investment lawyers. And I'll briefly explain what we do. We're in a field of investment called foreign direct investment. And what foreign direct investment means is as follows. If you go to a new country and you want to invest, you could invest in two ways. You could invest by buying shares in a company in that country, in which case it's called foreign portfolio investment. So it is a form of an indirect investment. Alternatively, you could go and purchase an apartment, purchase a building, rent it out as Airbnb or a serviced apartment or any kind of investment. That is foreign direct investment. Now, the second form of investment is the more lucrative one. When you do that, several issues present themselves, which are problems, and that's exactly what we do. We solve problems. So imagine you're coming to Kenya. First of all, how do you identify a property? How do you know that you're getting a real property? How do you know that you'll not get scammed? How do you know that the title that you're getting is correct? Do you need a work permit? What are the taxes? How do you send back your money back to the US? How do you stay on the right side of the law? So those are the questions that we answer for you. Those are essentially the problems that we solve. We help you, once you've identified the apartment, we help you, confirm that the apartment has good title. We're connecting due diligence. We help you get your work permit. We help you structure the whole deal. So essentially, we come in and help you think through your investment from start to finish until you make your money. Just before I pass the mic back to Ryan, I like to say that we're essentially equivalent to structural engineers. So we help you build your empire, but we help put in place a structure, and we are different first because more than anything we believe in trust and partnership and a long-term view of things. So we really want you to feel comfortable, to feel an element of trust, and we essentially just help you walk through that journey. And I'm excited to talk about that during this video with Ryan.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this because as we've been getting more involved here and as we spend more time and try to do more business, you start running into all the problems that you're talking about. Like, for example, I just bought a car recently and I only have a visitor KRA pin.
Yes.
So when we go to change the logbook, we couldn't do it. So now I need an entity to be able to do that. So when you're trying to do simple things here, you think you could just do it, but there's a lot of things that we don't know. And I think some kind of legal help is necessary if you're serious about being here, investing, even just being here long term, definitely any kind of business. I think it's important.
I agree with you, Ryan. With us, we have maybe the ability to stay here for longer periods of time, but the average vacation time for Americans is usually maybe about 1 to 2 weeks. You really can't make those moves quickly here, especially when you're talking about investing, either in real estate business or what have you.
On your own.
On your own.
Yeah.
So as you said, you guys are the extension
Correct.
of business here.
Correct.
You guys are the people that we can trust
Correct.
to inform us of the rules and regulations here to, allow us to remotely conduct business here.
Correct.
And that's the reason why I think legal representation is good here with a well-informed firm like yourself, pretty much. Yeah.
Indeed. Ryan, I just want to make a comment on what you've said. So, for example, you bought a car. Usually, many lawyers would look at it in a very straightforward way. How we look at it is that we first try to understand you. You know, what is your goal? If you're buying a car, definitely you want to be here for a long time. What do you want to do here? Do you want to farm? Do you want to invest? We would look at it differently. Beyond just getting the transfer of the vehicle, we would be very happy to help you get an international driver's permit here that allows you to drive. Because we don't want you calling us, there's a cop that just stopped me. We don't want to have those interactions. So we essentially just help you navigate through that. And interestingly, Kai, we actually have a good number of clients, a lot from South America, from the Caribbean, who are relocating to Kenya because they deeply feel that they came from Kenya hundreds of years ago. And we also help them in that repatriation. So we really understand what they want to do. There's one example of a gentleman that we have a 10-year plan with him because he wants to become a citizen in Kenya. We started a 10-year plan. He's going to put some investments and he's going to ultimately move here, So essentially we, just like you said, help you understand what you want to do and make it easy and possible for you. Yeah.
I have a few questions for
Yes.
you guys. I think it's very important as a foreigner, and as you guys are heavily involved in business here, what are the biggest mistakes that foreigners make when they come here that you guys, with experience, have witnessed and tried to resolve?
Let me go first and then Abdi can come next. I think first, the biggest mistake is I don't think it is ever an intentional mistake, that's why it's a mistake. But the biggest mistake that I've seen is a failure to understand the difference in culture. So now we work with clients from every continent except Antarctica. And we hope it gets some from Antarctica. But literally work with clients from all continents. Now, working with clients from the US, with clients from Europe, with clients from the UK, there is a very different psychological difference that they come with. Person from Asia, and sometimes from Central Asia, from Southeast Asia, have very different mentalities. So one big problem that I've seen is that because of that failure to understand what the culture looks like, then they get themselves into trouble. Sometimes they trust too much, which is a big problem, or sometimes they mistrust too much, which also just blunders the deal. So I think it is not an intentional mistake, but I've seen that happen a lot. What we try to do, because we have the privilege of working with all these kind of nationalities, we also make it our mission to understand the different cultures and what that means for people, And in addition to just giving legal support, because we really are partners. So we sit in meetings with these clients, we go for negotiations with them. If they're negotiating landlord leases, we actually go and sit down with them, and then we're able to read the room for them. So if a Kenyan person says, for example, well, thank you very much, let me think about it, I'll give you a call. They essentially mean a no, and we can see right through that. So I guess failure to understand the cultural difference is one big example. Over to Abdi.
Well, I personally think in many respects, foreigners to a large extent assume things. The biggest mistake I would say they usually make is assumption. They take things lightly, and in most cases, they end up, messing up big time. They end up, messing up their savings, investments, and, not able to distinguish who are the deal makers and who are the bystanders. So if you're able to identify the parties you're dealing with, and you don't take things and belittle things, then yes, you are in safe hands. Then you will definitely prosper and make big business. But if you walk in straight from New York or London or Melbourne and just land here, and the next day you want to purchase a property or open up a company or something, and you don't know who to go to, where to check up for, and they don't usually check the websites and the public information as well. So anyone who they come across ideally would be a favorable fit for them to sort out their issue, which is always not the solution. And most of them apparently, unfortunately, end up being conned, and that leaves a dent on the country's image. But if you deal with professionals, in every field we have professionals in that sector who are licensed to provide services, then yes, you will definitely prosper in your ventures.
Okay.
Can I?
Yeah.
Just allow me to say one more thing that just came to my mind when Abdi was speaking, and I think this is big because we actually have a live example. One other thing that I have seen is that foreigners heavily rely on information on the internet or ChatGPT. So they go online, and ChatGPT is a very good resource, but it's very general.
Yeah.
And I'll give you two very interesting examples. We have one case that you're dealing with now. A foreigner from a certain country. He came here, he got a Kenyan girlfriend who told him, if I'm your girlfriend, then you can buy property. Then you have residency by dint of me being your girlfriend. The gentleman, in a very trusting way, bought an apartment, put it in the name of the girlfriend. And believes that
Sounds like one of my friends here or something like that.
Exactly.
Hopefully it's not.
Hopefully it's not. So we are dealing with that situation, and it's like, wow, oh my God. So now there's a dispute. But now the property is in the name of the girlfriend. What to do, It becomes very, very difficult to enforce that, At the same time, he's in the wrong kind of visa. So how does he go and tell the police that I bought this apartment in this visa? It's not possible to buy an apartment. Secondly, no, this is a different example. Many times when, especially people buying real estate, go into the internet, they say, okay, so I'm investing. The automatic permit that they would see would be an investor's permit or an investor's visa. That's the general rule, right? But when you talk to a professional, for us, we try to understand. Maybe you don't want to come and live here. Maybe you're still employed in the US. This is just passive income for you. You'll come here over summer and then go back. We think it's very costly for you to get an investor's visa. If you go to ChatGPT and online, that is what they would recommend. But when they speak to professionals, for example, we would recommend a visa called digital nomads visa, which essentially suits them perfectly. So it can allow them to have that apartment here. They can travel to Kenya anytime that they want. It is far more cheaper than an investor's visa, and they can still maintain their employment in the US, So I've seen that as an example, just trusting the internet for information more than professionals, because ultimately cheap is expensive.
Do you think it's necessary to have residency if you're investing or doing a business here?
I think it significantly depends with the level of involvement in that investment. I'll give you two examples. In one case, we have clients who come, they just want to buy an apartment, and the apartment will be ready in 2 years, right? Because it's an off-plan property. In our view, there is no point of having a work permit, because you literally have no earnings with respect to that apartment for the next 2 years, right? So while you qualify for that work permit, it is not the right time, right? But in another case, like now we have a live example of a restaurant that we're helping clients set up just near the UN in Nairobi. So it's a partnership of individuals from different countries. They're setting up the restaurant starting next month for the next several months, right? That is a good case for a work permit, because they'll be here, they're bringing investments worth hundreds of thousands of US dollars. Because they'll be here on a daily basis, they'll purchase the property, they will renovate the property, they will get stuff. That is a good and live example for getting the work permit now. So you see, in both cases, both of them are investors, but their needs are different, right? So because we have a long-term view of the client, we're not greedy. We're happy to have your money, obviously, but that's not our concern. So if Kai, we think you should get a work permit in 2 years, we'll tell you, let's buy the apartment now, let's get your work permit in 2 years. But if we think that you need it now, then we'll tell you that you need it now. So it's on a case by case. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, just to add on what my colleague Frank has just said, what people don't often understand is the issue of work permit. Whether you're coming in as an investor, it's a very critical issue because what happens is the government would always want to be looking at who are these individuals who are coming into the country. So it's a form of security screening, in short. So they would want to know, is this individual sanctioned in a different jurisdiction? Is this individual, related to some terror organization, to a different, or is he an international fugitive? Yes, so it's a form of, safeguarding national interest. And that's why even applications when you make for work permit, usually they go for security screening through the NIS, that's the intelligence body. So they would do a background check on who you are, and if there's any suspicion or any reason to deny you, they'll flag it off. And yes, you will not be able to acquire it. And yes, I think immigration generally by extension, it's a global concern. It's not only to this country, but every country would want to know who are these people who are coming to this country, where are they from, what is the source of income itself is also a question, because we have had instances whereby people are tracked down because of money laundering and terrorism financing charges. So you don't want to have dirty money or money which you believe has been obtained through crime, channeling into the economy of a country and fostering some sort of bad economical aspect of it. So the country and the government at large is very critical on issues to do with who owns what and how they acquired it and how that investment is utilized. So it's a fundamental issue. As Frank rightly said, yes, it can be argued in both ways. One, of course, there's no immediate need at that particular time. If you're just a partial investor walking in, doing your things and, hoping to. But then there's also the element of dividends, or rather profits, because you see when you purchase or invest in something, there's an income you would be expecting. So that income ideally would now dictate how now the question of taxation would set in. Would you be taxed as a local resident or would you be taxed as a foreigner? Because this is an income which was generated locally. So there's also the element of taxation which comes into play.
Can we talk about real estate specific stuff and then maybe we'll get into the taxes? That sounds good. Okay. So the big question everybody has about buying property here is leasehold and freehold and that whole thing. I guess, can you speak to, probably the pluses and minuses of the leasehold versus freehold situation, and then maybe some strategies to be able to purchase property freehold, because many people, including myself, are not super enthused about owning leasehold land, especially if you're investing or putting money into it, plus you're caring about your legacy over time, your kids, and passing property down and such as that.
Can I add something to that, Ryan? That was a great question. Another thing about this leasehold is when you go to these developers, if you don't know what you're doing, these developers say it's 99 years that we got, right? But that was 18 BC that they had this property, right? So you find out that the leasehold of this property is about 16 years. And then they're telling you, well, within 5 years of when you buy this property, you just go to the government and you ask them. They ask them to extend your stay. Now, I'm sorry to say, I'm not saying anything about the government or anything else like that, but it's a little bit unnerving because in America, it's about ownership. Here, I understand we are foreigners here in this land, but if I have a 10-year leasehold and then you guys tell me within 5 years, I have to go to the government and do a 5-year negotiation to extend my lease, and then I lose it, that's $130K plus that I spent on this house that I was going to give down to my next generation. What's the loopholes of that? And people are saying, oh, you can do it. some people that I've talked to who are also lawyers said that's possible. Is there a high percentage that you can do this?
Okay, I'll go first and let me address this. The question with respect to what is freehold and leasehold. Okay, now in Kenya, land tenure is usually divided into two. We usually have the freehold and the leasehold. Now, before the Kenyan current constitution now, which came into effect in 2010, before then, we had properties whereby we could issue leases up to 999 years. But laws were changed, and because you see, the earlier the lease expires, the better it is for the government when it comes to revenue generation.
Exactly.
Yes. It's revenue generation. So they limited it to 99 years. Okay, now freehold generally stems from agricultural land. So in big cities and municipals, it's very rare to get freehold. Okay, but they are there, but the percentage is very less, maybe 10% of the landscape. 90% is just leasehold. Freehold means you own that parcel of land forever. It is generational wealth. So the moment you acquire it, there's no time limitation to it. Okay. What you're only supposed to be paying is what we call rates. You pay rates. But for leasehold, there's a time limitation attached to it. It's pegged on a number of years. And leasehold now is where foreigners come in. The law states that freehold properties or land can only be owned by Kenyan citizens, individuals, and not foreigners. Well, personally, I coined a way in which you can perhaps breach that, So my advice is simple. Come in. What you can do is you can form or rather incorporate a Kenyan company. When you do that, what would happen is you allot 99 or rather 98% shares to a Kenyan citizen who you possibly have an arrangement with, okay? And you will own maybe 1% of the shares. Use that to acquire the property or your stake of the property, which is freehold. Now, because this company is a Kenyan company, ideally it will be qualified for freehold. You see, so it will be treated like a Kenyan citizen, so to speak, because it's a Kenyan company. The only difference is this is a natural person and this is a legal person. But the rights attached to the ownership of freehold tenure in both are similar. So after now getting the title transferred to the company's name, now you can do changes. You can flip now. You can flip, get the 99% shares, and the Kenyan guy goes back to the 1%. Now,
is there an issue, though?
Yes.
Everyone's going to ask the liability of having a Kenyan citizen on your property that you just bought at 98% shares in the company.
And he's giving you this word like, I'll give it back to you. I'll give you your percentages back.
Yeah, sure.
So, actually, this is a genuine question. We have actually dealt with this several times in a real life situation. And I'll tell you how we have structured it. What we do, so the fundamental thing that must sustain is that there has to be some form of trust to begin with, or a relationship with this person, okay? This is a mitigating factor, just to, as much as possible, mitigate any form of exposure. But obviously, trust is never enough for lawyers. So how so how we structure that is that at the point of this Kenyan coming in, because the deal would be the one structuring that deal, when he's coming in as a director, would also prepare all the documents for his resignation and transfer of shares.
So the contract within the contract.
Exactly. So we would prepare all the documents. They would all be signed. There would be a resolution for the resignation. It will be undated, but there's the resolution for his resignation. There is transfer of shares that has already been signed. Everything we'll keep all the documents in our custody. The moment and then the land is transferred to the company, of course. Ultimately, what will happen is that there's just going to be a simple share transfer from you as a foreigner or an investor to the Kenyan and vice versa. When that time comes, we simply transfer the shares. The Kenyan person may never even be aware that this happened, because we would never need the engagement. Why? Because all the documents have already been signed and are in our custody. So we've actually done this for several people. Very recently, we did it for a UK national, and it was very successful. So yeah, while that is a real concern, we are also in the job of coming up with solutions and finding ways. But I want to mention there's another second route to getting freehold, but this is a lengthy one. It is by getting citizenship as a Kenyan person, but obviously this is after 7 years, But even that happens. We had an Irish national who went through that route. He was here for 30 years. Definitely, he became a citizen and he got it. But obviously, it's a very, very lengthy route. Both of them work.
Can you purchase a property leasehold if you intend to be here for a long period of time and eventually get citizenship, and then convert the title after you become a citizen back into freehold land? Is that expensive? What does that look like?
Yes, that is very possible, because what happens is, at the time of acquisition, you are a foreigner. So you would enjoy a certain land period tenure attached to the main mother title, which is the lease. But of course, after rigorous immigration processes, whether it's through work permit, whether it's through marriage, naturalization, whichever process you use to acquire citizenship, yes, you can always take back the title, and they can now peg it on the mother title, which still would remain freehold, because you see the property is freehold. So the initial title deed would be cancelled, a new one would be issued, because the circumstances have changed. You are no longer foreigner but Kenyan, and of course the tax implication itself would also change. So there's a lot of metrics which would come into place, not only the ownership aspect, but a lot of things which possibly as a foreigner you are liable to or required to do or undertake. But right now, because you become a citizen, all those things now will be waived. Coming back, I think, to your other discussion based on whether it's advisable to invest or engage in a project whose lease period is about to expire. Okay, it's true. What happens sometimes is preemption rights will always be with the current lease holder. In the event they are not able to comply for one reason or the other, maybe they cannot meet the terms of the lease, or the rent is a bit high because of economic inflation or something, then of course, that is the time now the government might consider a third party. But generally speaking, yes, sometimes leases run out. It's the nature of properties in Kenya. There's nothing like automatic ownership or exclusive ownership forever when it comes to leasehold properties. It's just a matter of getting your metrics right and seeing where you're supposed to be investing and how safe. However, and then finally, to add on, you don't renew the lease as an individual. Okay? Right now we have a new regime called the Sectional Properties Act. It's a new law which came into effect in 2020. Before then, we used to have a regime called the subleasing. So subleases have been rolled out. Now we have the sectional titles, which are being issued to individual sectional unit owners. Now, we have a corporation, and that particular building or apartment which you acquire, they will have a corporation, which is more of like a management company, so to speak. So it's going to be owned by the unit owners. So each unit owner ideally would be entitled to one share of that corporation. So it's the corporation as a legal entity which would be applying for the extension of the lease, and if it has expired, it will be applying for a renewal of the lease on behalf of the unit owners.
So my question is, on any leasehold renewal, is there a policy or requirements that the government has to follow as far as maybe it's a percentage of the value of the land or the development, or can the government just say you have to pay $5 million to renew the lease? So how do they come to the lease renewal?
Well, of course, they do valuation, because you see, property always appreciates in Kenya. Land appreciates, so definitely they'll do valuation, and it's that valuation which will now determine the prevailing rates at which the government would demand. But of course, it will not be anything close to the actual purchase price of that particular project. No, far from that. Far from that.
And historically, has that been a fair evaluation, or has funny business happen with?
Now, as a matter of fact, personally, what I believe is you can always collude with the government valuer, because the government would send a valuer, and the valuer would prepare a valuation report, which now would be used to determine the amount that is due to be paid. So if the corporation is strong enough, I don't want to say this, but they can, make some arrangements with the valuer, and do some sort of undervaluation, so that they can be liable to pay a few pennies. Yes.
But it's that concept that makes us feel uncomfortable. The under the table deals, rub my back, rub yours, and if you are not connected, you're right. If you guys are coming to our country and you're not connected like how we're coming to your country, how do we know this? How do we know to talk to this guy? But I don't really want to conduct myself like that. I want to conduct myself as an honest businessman. So how do we do this the right way, guys? That's what I want to know. How do we do this the right way?
We do this the right way, of course, by engaging the right professionals. So it's our job to make sure you enjoy your investments. So it's our job as FKC Legal to make sure that all the loopholes, all the gaps are properly sealed, and we don't have any never-ending litigation cases which might affect your stay in this country. So it's all upon us, and doing legal compliance to see what exactly is required of you as a client, as an investor, and how best we can advise you on the business model, and of course, the relevant procedural steps we need to undertake, not to have you exposed, since you're in a foreign land and you're a foreign investor. So it's our job to make you feel at home through legal compliance and ensuring that the law is fully, abided by.
So, yeah.
I just want to add on that, and also to nail that question on the head. So how you think of it is, fortunately, when you buy a unit in an apartment in a certain building, you're not the only purchaser, unless you're extremely rich, so you can buy 200 flats, But in many cases, you'll buy a few, maybe 1, 2, 10. We've had instances where people buy significant numbers. If let's imagine this building has 100 units, if you have one unit, then you have one share in that corporation. Mm-hmm. So a corporation is some form of a company. Mm-hmm. It is the animal that comes in addition to owning the relevant unit. So it is the corporate that will be in charge of cleaning your common areas, servicing your lift. It's actually the corporation that you pay the service charge, right? Mm-hmm. So one thing that should make your mind easy is the fact that the same way that you don't have to worry about who cleans the lift, who cleans the staircases, who does what, it's the same way you wouldn't have to really worry about the renewal of the lease, because that will be a responsibility by the corporation. Okay, like Abdi mentioned, it will not be an individual obligation. So you won't go as Kai, I want to go and renew my lease, right? That will be done all at the same time by this corporation. So
for everybody?
For everybody, yes.
Okay.
It is done for everybody.
Okay.
Now, what we have seen from practice, then what you can do, and we've never had a problem with this. We've seen property owners then get very good managements or managers for these cooperatives or corporations, right? In fact, we work with some corporations of such sorts where they even hold annual general meetings for all the property owners.
That's very important.
And we've been invited to some of these things. We're invited as lawyers. So they actually hold AGMs virtually, usually, because most of them are foreigners. On that AGM, they will discuss many things. They will for example, discuss, are we happy with this management? Do you want to change? Is there anything that is coming up? Just to be on the same page, And this would only need to happen once a year, So when that time for the renewal comes, while I know it feels heavy because you feel like you'll be alone, but you wouldn't really be looking at it. It wouldn't be handled by a foreigner per se. It will be handled by a cooperation agreement, which you have a share in, which will most likely be also handled by experts in that industry. And I have to say honestly, we've been in this industry for a long time. I have not seen a single situation where there has been an issue with renewal. There have been delays here and there, but we've not had an issue with renewal of the subleases. And thankfully now we have that very powerful ruling by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, which is the most binding. Yeah.
Just to add on what my colleague had just alluded to, of course, mostly 99% from what I know from experience, governments ideally would renew the lease, except instances whereby public interest supersedes private interest. So, for instance, if that property sits on a strategic area where there's supposed to be some mining or oil exploration, or maybe there's a public need for school, then yeah, definitely. So that's principle in law. It's called eminent domain, or what we call compulsory acquisition. But the good thing with it is that the Constitution and the law addresses that. So you would be fully reimbursed at profit margin rates, way and above the normal transaction situation, because you have been inconvenienced. So through such inconvenience, you will be entitled to, hefty sums of perks and money.
Yeah, we have a similar concept. We have eminent domain as well, so we have the same situation that can happen if they want to build a school.
Exactly,
like that.
exactly.
I don't think they're going to want to build a school on a 20-story development, but
however, on a light note, some people make use of it, and some people exploit it to the fullest. For example, I'll give you an example whereby we had this railway line between this Mombasa and Nairobi, the SGR, and when government had announced that there's gonna be a railway line which is gonna pass here, so some people rushed to the site and bought empty properties so that now they get
out.
hell of a money for compensation.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's relatable.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's it. You are likely to get your lease renewed, and it should not be a point of concern.
Okay. So to summarize the leasehold freehold, if someone works with you guys, you would be able to set up a business entity and deal with all that issues if they wanted to pursue, if they didn't feel comfortable with leasehold, really for land, because with the apartments, it's always pretty much going to be freehold. But for if they're buying a farmland or an estate or something like that, there is a legal strategy to be able to acquire the property freehold and not have to deal with the leasehold. But would you say, in summary, that the leasehold is not the biggest downside? If you were a foreigner, would you be comfortable purchasing on leasehold?
Well, it honestly depends. It's on a case-by-case basis. If the property or the investment you want to engage yourself in, it sits on a leasehold property, well, you have no choice. Because even the Kenyan citizen himself would get the same leasehold rights as you.
Right.
Yeah. The only difference is the Kenyan citizen has an upper hand is when the property is freehold. But with respect to leasehold, we are all the same.
Okay.
Yes. So if the lease expires, it expires for everyone, be it a citizen or a foreigner, because it's pegged on the mother title. So the mother title reads it has 40 years of reversionary interest, 40 years residual timeline. That's the rule. It applies across the board.
If I may respectfully give you a rebuttal, for a nation that might possibly have a heavy debt, such as this, the Westlands is a huge asset that can now be given back to the government, and now it's the government's asset that helps with this debt crisis. How do you guys think about that?
That's interesting. On a light note, sometimes we have joked that with how this government is borrowing money, we might one day be auctioned by China, you know, or you know, maybe lose some of our strategic installments. But let me say it in two ways. First, we haven't had a situation where the government has defaulted in paying of its debt. You know, sometimes when it is reported globally, it seems as if, of course, Kenya has debt. Now, in terms of Kenyan shillings, it's about 11 trillion shillings, but still our GDP is almost double of that, you know. But the thing that sometimes people get wrong, out of that, almost 60% is domestic debt. So maybe around 40-something% is external debt. So maybe 40% comes from IMF, World Bank, China, you know. If it gets to a point where the government defaults on debt, for example, the biggest the people who would be adversely affected would be Kenyans, because those are the domestic lenders to the government, right? So I don't think that the government would liquidate and say, now, so I have a treasury bill of yours for 100 million, I give you this building. I don't think that would be practical. What I think would happen from other nations, because I'm a student of international investor state law, that is actually my master's in law. Usually the first thing that would be affected would be government strategic installations. For example, like the port, because I mean, yeah, the Westland is a key facility, but can you imagine how much the government makes from having the port?
Yes.
You know? Yes. The railway line, the airport even. The airport is a multi-million-dollar investment for the government.
They almost sold it, right?
They almost leased it to to an Indian farm, you know.
Oh, wow. And actually, as a point of statistic, I was looking up the debt ratio, GDP to debt in Kenya. It's actually significantly less than the U.S.
Yes.
GDP to debt. Yeah. So I see all this news about Kenyan debt, but by ratio to GDP to debt, the U.S. has significantly higher ratio. So I'm like, why are they always talking about the debt here?
No, but see, it's important for us to talk about it.
We can
It's important
money.
because if we don't, then the government will overboard us. It's important to make a lot of noise. Otherwise, they will definitely borrow. But I think in a doomsday scenario, that would be a concern. But it would be really, really extraordinary, you know. I'm sure the Chinese will be happy to take the port first before Westlands, you know?
Right.
Because even if they take Westlands, I mean, think about it. So who's going to rent? Everyone's just going to leave and come to another neighborhood, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to continue on a little bit about ownership and then get to taxes, and that kind of plays into the different entities.
I want to ask a basic question, if I possibly can.
A quick, okay. Go ahead.
So just basically, as a foreigner looking for a lawyer, what are the questions that you can talk to a Kenyan lawyer about to evaluate that they actually are a good lawyer? Everybody's going to sit here and say this, and that. But what are some key questions that us as foreigners can ask? Not you guys. You guys got the nice tailored suits and everything. But I'm just saying, to evaluate that they're actually the right lawyer. What should this lawyer say and respond to how they treat with the foreigner when it comes to business here?
Good. In the course of our discussions, we'll talk briefly about FKC, our logo, and whatnot, and one thing that we'll also talk about in detail is our vision. Now, but just for the purpose of this question, our vision is to be the leading and most trusted and transformative investment law firm in Africa. That's first, and I'll come back to that. But the second part, to set the standards for seamless investment environment in Africa, right? So I'm always very happy to share this information, because when we do what we do, I don't ever think that we want to hog the investment. You know, we certainly can't handle all the investment coming to the country, but we want to set the standard on how foreign direct investments should be done in Kenya, right? And so when I'm giving this information, this is just general. So now, if you want to go to when you're coming to Kenya, there's some things that I would advise that you do and confirm before you engage a lawyer. Number one, confirm, does that lawyer have a license to practice? Okay, and that can be easily confirmed. Hopefully, I don't have to appear on the video, but there's a link. We are regulated by a society called the Kenya Law Society, or LSK, Law Society of Kenya. If you just type Law Society of Kenya engine search, it will give you a platform where you can search each and every advocate. So for example, if someone comes and says, my name is Franklin, I'm a lawyer, let's say, can I have your full names? If you type it there, you will see whether that lawyer has a license to practice. That is like the basic minimum, you know.
Right.
You will see also if they're suspended, you will see if they have any disciplinary issues, it will all be indicated there, you know. That's number one. Number two, confirm whether they have an office, you know. The other day a client reached out to us and they were like, they dealt with a client, a lawyer, they paid them. You know, they've discovered that the lawyer doesn't have a physical office. Apparently it was an assistant in some law firm, you know. So first confirm, so are they really a lawyer? Are they regulated? Number two, do they have an office? Do they have a website? In other cases, also confirm whether they have a professional indemnity cover. As an investor, that's very, very important, because once you engage a lawyer, in the event that there is professional misconduct, if this lawyer mishandles you and then you lose money, you want to be in a situation where you are insured. You can go and say, I engaged this lawyer, I have lost $100,000, I want a refund. So confirm whether they have a professional indemnity cover. If possible, ask for it, so that in the event that there is misconduct on the part of the lawyer, you can easily be indemnified. Okay, so those are some of the things to really consider. So trust but verify.
Trust but verify. I like that.
I think it'd be good to talk about kind of your business actually
Yes.
before we get more into some of the specifics. So
Yes.
can you tell us more about the vision, the logo, who's the right client for you, all that kind of stuff.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you. Now, let me start with. Let me first talk about our four main ambits, right? We do four main things. The first, which we have talked about at length, is we are specialized specifically in foreign direct investment, or FDI. In fact, that forms more than 80% of our portfolio. On any single day, we work with foreigners from across the globe, The second arm is domestic investment. Now, domestic investment graduated from success in foreign direct investment, because when you initially come in as an investor, as a foreigner, you have specific things you're dealing with. For example, work permit, what is your tax, bank account, acquisition. But after 1 year, you no longer have foreigner problems. Now you're operating in Kenya, potentially you have a company or a trust. Your problem start becoming like those of a normal Kenyan. So all of a sudden your tax regime is like a Kenyan. So you start to think, do I need licenses? Do I need permits? Do I need leases? Now that falls under our docket for our domestic investment. So we treat you as a domestic investor, and then we have a special package and consideration for you, because then whatever you're thinking about is different, right? The third ambit, we have a portfolio that we call strategic partnerships. And the strategic partnerships, it's essentially a networking thing that we do. And we do it in two ways. First, when you come in as an investor, sometimes you don't know anyone. Okay? So, for example, Kai, you come, you buy an apartment. That's very good. But let's imagine you've never been in Kenya before. So you buy an apartment, it's complete. What do you do? How do you get a tenant? How do you manage the property?
Yep.
Where do you buy the furniture? So will you start going to Ngong Road and be like, oh no, it's 12,000? No. How do you do that?
That's exactly what Ryan's going through right now.
Some people do that, right?
Figuring it out.
Yeah. So Ryan is courageous, right? Because Ryan is a people's person. He can move around. Sometimes, like you said, the normal foreigner only has 2 weeks to be in the country, right? Because they're on a clock. So they don't have that. So essentially what we do is that, because we discovered that we're in an ecosystem where we have access to so many investors and so many businesses, people doing different things, then you create partnership across the board for free. So for example, you'd come like, okay, we have some partner who does purely furnishes. So why don't you have a meeting with them? We have these 2 or 3, please meet with them. They can furnish the house for you. They can give you seats, chairs, beds, everything. They can do that for you. We have these 3 partners that we work with who do management for you. Why don't you talk to them? If an example of like the clients who are coming in to set up a restaurant, tell them, okay, so we have set up the whole legal structure for you, but we can't help you hire. So as a foreigner, how do you start hiring? How do you get the best chef?
Yeah.
How do you have that conversation?
And the culture.
The culture, yeah. And then if you go there as a foreigner trying to hire a chef, all of a sudden his salary is 4 times,
Exactly. For sure.
So in SP or strategic partnerships, we put you in touch with the right people. So for example, we'd be like, this is our partner in HR and hiring. and usually we'd give you one or two. So because we don't, ultimately the decision is yours. Then you can have a conversation with them. They would help you, say, in hiring, in staffing, in training, So, and we don't charge for that service. It is our information for free, so we give it out for free. So, for example, today, if we need someone who wants a property in the US, reach out to Ryan for real estate property in the US, So we do that in strategic partnerships. Then the fourth, and for me the most exciting, we are very big in corporate social responsibility. Okay? Now, we believe with investment in a purpose. One of the things that we'll actually sign when you come in with us is that we'll sign a letter of engagement. And the letter of engagement will give us an indemnity and guarantee that you're giving us funds that are not illicit. Because we also, like Abdi said, we are not in the business of financing terrorism or bringing illicit funds. So we want first to be sure that we're working with legitimate people, right? Now, because we believe in investment with a purpose, what we do has significant impact, and we're very proud of it. First, because if you set up, for example, an Airbnb, first you're going to pay taxes. You provided employment to at least 2 or 3 people, So, and you're also injecting something into the economy. So it is a conveyor belt that by the time you get back your money, you've made employment for a cleaning lady, you've made employment for the person who's managing it, and so we feel that there's a huge impact on that. But there's something else that we do. We work a lot in underprivileged parts of the society, particularly in slums. We have a project that we currently run in Mukuru slum. I don't know if you've been there. I would really want Ryan to visit that place someday, feature it. Mukuru slum. We also have another program that we run in Kibera slums. Kibera slums is, I think, the biggest slum in Africa. It has almost 1 million people living there, I'll give you an example of the project we have in Mukuru slum. We work with a community-based organization called Jithamini. Jithamini is a Swahili word that means, what does it mean? Like, it's like believe in yourself or work hard, Predominantly, they're in the area of education. At the beginning of our interaction with them, which was about more than 2 years ago, we came in initially to help them, first of all, structure themselves, because that's our strength. And then we slowly moved into helping them sustain their programs. So, for example, we worked with them to set up a very beautiful library in the slum. Really, really beautiful. I really want Ryan to feature it. We helped them try and get people to supply books for the school. And they even have a portable library, which is in the form of a van. This van, these normal matatus, on a given week, it serves up to 1,400 kids in the slums,
Wow.
So now that was successful, but then we noticed that there was a problem. What's the problem? People in the slum live under $1 a day, surprising, a whole household, not an individual. So then we discovered that girls the teenagers would miss school about a week every month. And why? Because for a week, they go through their monthly periods. Now, between buying food and buying sanitary pads, they would definitely buy food, right? Now, this affected their studying. They don't want to come to school because they're period shamed. And so then school becomes secondary. They'd rather stay home, use tissue papers or use rags as their sanitary pads. So then together with the organization, we came up with a beautiful project called Sister Circle. Towards the end of last year, culminating in May of this year. So we ran a very successful campaign called Sister Circle, and we were able to raise pads and sanitary hygiene materials. So panties, soaps, pads for more than 400 girls in that school. So girls in school and young mothers, And we developed the program in a way that with only, imagine, for example, 3,000 shillings. 3,000 shillings is maybe $23, right? $23 is enough to sustain sanitary pads for one girl for a whole year in school, because of the program. And that was very successful, culminating in a big celebration that we had. I'll share some clips with Ryan. We had it on the 28th of May. It was a global menstrual hygiene day, and we were a big part of that. In Kibera slums, because we have a practice in intellectual property, we work with young artists who, they're very talented. So they sing all the time, they draw, they paint, but they get easily exploited by the big boys, right? So we have meetings with them so many times here in the office. We say, so you're a songwriter, you're a singer, you're a producer, these are your rights. We help draft the contracts for them. And then if they're getting into contracts, say with Safaricom, we review the contracts for them. Do exactly what we do for our corporate clients, but we do it for them for free, right? Because we believe that we can sustain that that relationship. And then lastly, I should have mentioned this actually still on that. Next week on Thursday we have a training that we're doing for girls who are models. So young models, very talented, but they can't afford legal services. They're very expensive, and also us we charge a fee, right? But we have a sit down with them, tell them, so young girls as models, these are your rights, because they're easily taking advantage of, sleep with me, I'll give you, So help them, these are your rights as models, this is how you should negotiate your contract, and that is the fourth arm of the firm. Now,
That's very impressive.
Yeah. Now, let me talk very fast about FKC and what the logo represents. I'll share this and you can have a look at it in detail. But essentially, let me just put it here. Essentially, our logo is the African footprint, the African map with a footprint, right? What this essentially means, and you see our tagline is just start legally. The common theme that you will see across our discussion is that we're in the business of enabling people to just start, be it investments, be it girls in school, be it young artists in slums. We enable people to start because we believe that Africans are very talented, if they're just given tools to start, they can easily, even you as a foreigner, if you're a real estate person, if we just enable you to come and set up your enterprise here, you will know how to run your business. So first of all, we enable you to just start legally. So that's our tagline. Our logo is the African map. But as a footprint, right? I really love that part, Now, what that means is that we are enabling you, first of all, have your footprints in Africa, right? But there's something more. Look closely. If you touch this glass, I leave my fingerprint. That is an element of our logo because we enable you in whatever you're doing to also leave your fingerprints, to leave your fingerprints. And then my best detail in that logo, there is almost a Wi-Fi thing where Kenya is, because FKC Legal started in Kenya, and now we have representation in jurisdictions across Africa, Ghana, Cape Town, Egypt, Nigeria, different parts that we work with different lawyers. But as just like the Wi-Fi thing, it started in Kenya, and that's essentially who FKC is.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
Very
you
nice.
Add something?
Yeah, and just to perhaps just sum it up, you see, as a foreigner, when you come to a foreign land, what many lawyers ideally would do is just to provide solutions to your problems. But at FKC, we don't believe in only providing solutions. We go beyond the solution. So what we will do is hold your hand through the entire journey, from providing solution to your problems, your challenges, to creating opportunities for you in that foreign land. We will be with you throughout the process, advising you. If it's immigration, we get you the services you need. We create pockets of opportunities for you, So you just came into the country as someone who just wanted to buy land. But we will not just stick to land. We will help you do business in this country by helping you register a company, giving you access to a bank account where you can bank your money, getting access to a KRA PIN. We will also help you get the proper immigration paperwork done. So we will definitely also introduce you to people of your interest where you would want to venture into. So if it's the food and catering sector you're looking at, we have people in that industry. If it's the real estate, we have people working in that industry. If it's about the human resource department you're looking at, we have HR consultants that we closely work with. So in every, I would say, sector, we have an array of individuals and companies who we closely collaborate with, and we had also signed a number of partnership deals with a lot of brands. So it's not just giving you a one-time solution to your problem. It's going beyond the solution, being innovative and, helping you grow as an investor, because you came in as an investor. So our work is to make your business grow bigger, look at other opportunities that you might not possibly have reflected at the time of your arrival, and, try to see how best you can get out of your investment while you're still in this country.
So just as a point of, this is not going in there, but I might move around the conversation. I might put what you just were talking about in front, and then I'll probably chop it into different pieces, like the part about and then different answers. So, but I'll also put out the full thing as well, just so you kind of know what's going on. What else? Did we want to talk? Well, I did want to add a question about trust.
Yes.
And then taxes, and then what else were you
No,
thinking
that was
about
the basic
talking
one that I really wanted to touch. I think people need to understand that because it's something that I went through.
What is that?
Just the whole evaluation of talking to these lawyers.
about?
You really
He's
have
been
to.
going through it.
Yeah, you have to.
I can see that.
You have to kind of,
Yeah.
right now it's off a referral basis and everything else like that. And I've done the same thing. I went on the computer and I did look up these individuals, but me and Ryan being involved in business, especially real estate business in the States, there's certain red flags that we can recognize. However, a lot of people, as me and Ryan talked about, they're doing a mass exodus out of America emotionally. And they're not logically thinking when they come down here. So at that point, it leads to an emotional decision, or they trust people emotionally because they're home in the motherland.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think we try to stop that. We're more experienced to kind of say,
You got to be
hold up.
practical. They're dreaming sometimes.
Exactly, but we're able to kind of pump the brakes. So that's the reason why I asked that question. Yeah.
Let me add. So that's why I was excited to talk to Franklin and Ahmed because. Did I get that right? I'm sorry. What is
Abdi.
Abdi. Oh my gosh. Let me reset that. So that's why I'm super excited to talk to Franklin and Abdi because I'm a different kind of person because I come out here and I'll just figure it out. But a lot of you guys, if you're on, like I said, if you're on a limited time frame, there's a lot of friction. Plus, there's a lot of things that you don't know. So someone that can clear the path for you and probably save you money, even though we haven't talked about your guys' fees or anything like that. But I think we'll talk about that in a second. But honestly, if you're facilitating a lot of things, you'll save people time and money because people could get overcharged or just incidentally not know something and then have to double back and pay even more money. So that's super awesome. I guess what do you how is you don't have to say numbers on the fee structure, but like how does that work? Because you're kind of like all stop shop for a lot of services. In the US, that makes me a little nervous because our lawyers bill by the hour. If they send you an email, the email might cost you $25. So can you speak to the fee structure?
Yeah. Let me start by saying that in Kenya, when we are building billable hours, we also bill you for every second we think about you. If I dream of you, I'm billing you triple.
I gotta convert that currency exchange right there.
I think about you. So we're definitely billing you. But yeah, essentially, first I'd like to say that we are. I wouldn't describe ourselves as cheap, because that is not a brand that we want to have on our shoulder. I also wouldn't describe ourselves as expensive. We are cost effective in this way. First of all, we have a unique advantage in that we have a very long-term horizon with you, right? So when we charge you, depending on where you look at it, you might find that our fees might be low or higher. But when we charge you, we first of all understand that our biggest currency is trust and relationships. Money is really a secondary thing for us, So we want you to have peace of mind for trust and relationships, So that is something that we'd always take into consideration. When we are charging, we would also consider, especially in properties, we have requirements under the law. We have a document called the Advocacy Remuneration Order, which is a document that governs how we should charge our legal fees. So I'll tell you straight up. For example, if we're representing you in a conveyancing or in a transaction, there would be stipulated fees for that transaction. And usually it would be a percentage based. Depending on the value, that would range anything between 2%, 1.5%, or 1%. Okay? Sometimes the higher the value, the lower the percentage, But it would essentially be around that figure. In a way, it is unfair for lawyers because I could potentially charge you 2%. The government is charging you a stamp duty of 4% for doing absolutely nothing. And as a lawyer, I'm charging you potentially, Ryan won't be happy to hear this, but I'm charging you, say, 2%. Agents would potentially get 3% or 4% or 5%. So as a lawyer, I'm getting less than the agent, but we stick within those requirements. We've actually had cases where clients, especially American clients, want to come and they want to be billed per hour. So we also take that into consideration. Some clients, when they come here, they say, no, I'm very comfortable with hourly billable, or I'm comfortable with a fixed amount, which is capped at this amount, or sometimes I'm comfortable with it being charged pegged on a percentage of the assignment, all of it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all the same for us. We're happy if we can give you value and if we can be comfortable. So if you prefer a billable, an hourly rate, then we do that. But it's really the least favorable method. Most clients would either prefer a percentage based on the subject matter or just a straight up agreed amount for the whole transaction.
So if you're setting up a business entity and trust or whatever you happen to be doing, what's your preferred way of how most business that you do?
Yes. So the first thing that we'd do is we'd usually have, as a preliminary point, we'd have a meeting with you, usually 90% virtual. Then if you come to the country, we are happy to meet you physically in our very beautiful offices. So usually we'd first understand what it is that you want. Sometimes when you come in as a client, because of the different regimes, for example, in the US you have an Inc. and you also have an LLC, and they mean different things. So when you come here, first we try to understand what is the best outfit for you. We are like doctors. If you go to a doctor and you say, I have a headache, I have a fever, my joints are aching, they will diagnose, is it malaria, is it tonsillitis, whatever. So we do the same thing for you. And then let's imagine we prescribe a company for you. Before we proceed, we would ideally sign a letter of engagement with you. The letter of engagement would stipulate all our arrangements. What is our responsibility? This is our liability, this is our undertaking to you, and this is also equally your responsibility. So you have a clear understanding from the word go that this is also your responsibility. And we would never start any work without signing that letter of engagement. Once that is done, then we'd go ahead and do the company incorporation. To be honest, there's hardly ever a fixed fee. Some incorporations are simpler than others. We've had instances where we're involved in a transaction which involved a national from the US, from Germany, from India, from Somalia and Kenya, so 5 people. It took us 4 months to register the company because we had to first negotiate thoroughly the shareholders agreement. Now these are 5 different cultures. The Indian has a different culture from the American, has a different culture from the Somali. The Somali is very trusting. The German is very untrusting, The German wants to read every single line,
Right.
The Indian says, no, but has the lawyer read? Yes. The Somali has the lawyer read? Yes, good, done. Halas, finish, So in such cases would obviously end up being a bit more expensive because of the duration and the length. Some clients would come and say, it's us too, it's very simple, It's a straightforward. In straightforward engagements, in 2-3 days maximum, you have the company incorporated, you get your carrier PIN, and you get your bank account thereafter. So in terms of charging, just to answer the question, there's hardly ever a straight jacket application, but we really try to be reasonable and provide value, again, having understood exactly the needs of the client.
Okay. Getting back to the business entity situation and the land, and just if you were operating in general, it seems like you kind of probably want some kind of entity. As an alternative, what do you guys think about trust? What are the benefits versus the downsides of having a trust versus a business entity or LLC?
It's a good question. You see, trust is regulated by a legislation called the Trustees Act. Okay? It's not a new phenomenon in this country. It's been there. Of late, it's strictly regulated. And the reason is because the government and the taxman realize that people are resorting to use trust in trying to, I would say, avoid liabilities to a large extent as compared to having an LLC, a limited liability company. So its registration itself is tedious and lengthy. It is not the easy process that you all knew some years back. Now, trust is good because when it comes to confidentiality, it's very way stronger than the private company. For instance, if let's say your country of origin would want to know if you have any investments in this country, the first thing would be if they conduct a search on the registry now, that is the Business Registration Services, and they possibly, for instance, they know the company which you operate in. It's very easy for them to get down to the root of who the shareholders are and who the directors are.
So you guys from the U.S. should pay real close attention to what he just said, because the U.S. government follows you everywhere with taxes.
Absolutely, yes. So, of course, the legal structure and the framework governing trust in a company is different. For a trust, we have the creator of the trust, who's now called a settlor. Okay, and the person administering the trust is called a trustee, and the ultimate beneficial is called a beneficiary. So there's a legal relationship between. It's a tripartite type of a relationship. A trustee only comes in, especially in cases where the beneficiary is not of is a minor, it hasn't attained the age of majority, which is 18 as per the law of this country. So they usually hold the property or the investment on their behalf. But many business ventures, or rather many investments, are perfectly structured to favor LLC because many people don't understand how the trust works, and so because of I would not say ignorance, but lack of understanding, there's limitation on how fully to capitalize on the benefit that trust usually comes with. As for the LLC, of course, it's a private company. Initially, before 2016, you would not own a company on your own. You would need minimum 12 individuals, 2 and above, to own a company. But from 2016, under the New Companies Act, now you can own a company as an individual. So there's what we call a one-man company. And you don't need to be a citizen for you to own a company. You can own a company while you're a foreigner. Just indicate that you can have a Kenyan director with no shares. So as a foreigner, you can retain the 100% shareholdings, but you can have the Kenyan person as a director with 0 shares, just to work out the paperwork, while you're trying to get your work permits. At least he can, represent the company in 1 or 2 things, of course, with your express, instructions through what we call a power of attorney or something. You can come up with a formula or an arrangement in place. Yeah, so trust has benefits attached to it because there's some opacity in it. If you want to conceal some transactions or something, yes. But if you are a very open-minded person and you want to get into a lot of business transactions, then many business partners would prefer dealing with an LLC as compared to a trust. Yes.
Cool. Do you have anything on that?
No, I don't have anything on that.
Then can we talk about the taxes? Oh yeah, can we talk about taxes?
Well, taxes differ. We have various types of taxes. The body that regulates the taxing in this country is the Kenya Revenue Authority. So they're the ones who set the policies and the frameworks and on what sort of tax we have. We have different types of taxes, from income tax. We have what you call pay as you earn, which is 30% of the income of the individual. That is the after now, that is the gross salary, 30%.
30% of gross?
Yes.
Where does it?
It's the net or the gross?
It is,
It should be 30%.
yes. It's 30%, but after expenses.
Okay, net.
After
net,
expenses,
net.
yes. After
Okay,
expenses. 30% after expenses.
What about pay as you earn?
Oh, so you mean pay as you earn? Yeah. Actually, actually it's gross or pay as you earn.
Wow.
But no. But it is about 30%, but it is on a graduated scale. So I'll give an example. But I'll try and translate to US dollars. Anyone earning between 1 shilling in Kenya to 24,000 shillings, that's anything between $1 to $200, doesn't pay any taxes.
Okay, yeah, we had the same
Exactly,
same
yeah.
situation.
So-
So,
and
that's
then
just
the
the
average
top.
goes, yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
if you make over $1 million, then you're paying
Yeah.
30% on the money made over $1 million, right? So your million first dollar is what you're
I
saying.
see. No. So in Kenya, it is a graduated scale, but it is subjected to different bands, have different tax regimes.
Right.
So then the amount between say $200 to say $500 are subjected to 10% tax. So there's 10% on that. Anything between that amount to the next is subjected to 20%.
Okay.
So on average, it comes to about 30%, maybe slightly lower, but every band has a different tax rate application. So it is not straight up 30%.
In reference to us, what are we looking at as taxes, and what's the best tax strategy?
Is there like a specific tax for foreigners? Just because we're foreigners, what kind of taxes that we have to deal with when it comes to that?
Good. So you got Kai's question, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Now, let me talk with respect to foreigners, taxes that you need to be aware of, right?
Yeah, please.
Really paying attention.
Yeah, this is very, very important. So grab your notebooks. So if you're coming in as a foreigner, in few instances, you will have to worry about your employment tax because many times that would be sorted by your employer and whatnot. But if you're coming in as a foreigner, there would be several taxes to think about. Number one, if you own a property in your own name or individual as Kai, as a foreigner, you are required to pay, and you're banking rental income specifically for apartments. Let's start very specifically. The tax applicable on that property is 7.5% gross of monthly rent. Okay. So, if you have a tenant who pays $1,000, you're required to pay an equivalent of $750 every month. But because you're a foreigner, it doesn't make sense to pay that amount every month.
Or 250.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then you'd be required to pay that on an occasional basis, usually after several months, usually after 1 year. So then when you're doing your tax returns, we'd say, so Kai, you are earning $1,000. Every month you should pay $750. No, like what is 750? $250, yeah. Right. So then
if we got that wrong in there, sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't matter. You guys get
lawyers and math, so technically, then we'd advise you at the end of the year, as FKC, then we'd also help you file those returns, So you wouldn't have to think about it. When the date comes, we'll tell you, Kai, it's due for your tax payment, and this is how much you're supposed to pay. So that's 7.5% of monthly rental income. But this is only until your income from that rent exceeds 15 million shillings. 15 million shillings is about 100 grand.
Per annum.
Per annum, yeah. So if
annually, you said.
Annual,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
So if you have a very luxurious apartment and you're getting a total of $200,000 a year, then you will pay 30%. It will be treated as a company. Okay. But if it is anything below 100 grand annually in income, then it is 7.5%.
But we're talking as a sole proprietorship. So
if you own it as an individual.
As an individual,
right? And that's 30% of net.
No,
or gross.
It is of net.
Of net. So
net.
you can put your expenses.
Yes.
Into the 30% if you're operating.
Yes. Actually, that's where I want to head now.
Okay.
Now, most clients prefer to have it in a different structure, right? Now, you see, the 7.5%, it is usually a mathematical question, right? And so we actually sit down with clients, spend hours doing, we don't guess, we don't speculate, we actually, how much you're getting for rent, So we do the mathematics for you. In some cases, it makes sense to have this apartment in fact, in most cases, to have the apartment in a company. Because if you have it in a company, then it is an asset for the company. It becomes a business for the company. In which case, you will run it as a business in the company, and you will pay 30% of your net profits. Now I will clarify that. If you have this apartment, Kai, and you're spending, you're earning 50,000 grand at the end of the year, your input in terms of your expenses is say 45,000. You'll only pay 30% of the 5,000.
Oh, wow.
Okay?
Yes.
Now, how we come in, and that's usually the most preferred method. How we come in is that we help you structure that arrangement from the very beginning. And there's a way that we've found a way to make it work. One of the allowable expenses would be your cost in furnishing the apartment.
Yes.
It would also be in how you finance the purchase of that apartment. If we've done very good structures for clients who, for example, have an American, we're actually doing that presently. Someone has an American company, they're coming to invest in Kenya, so we set up a Kenyan company. We have then transferred that money as a loan from the American company. Now, loans, repayments, or interest in loan repayment are also allowable expenses in Kenya for tax purposes. So, when you're and that has two advantages. When you'll be sending back your money to the US, it's very simple. You're paying back a loan. Now, that is not taxed. Okay? You're repatriating the funds, it is not taxed, and it is purely legal, right? Additionally, at the end of the day, yes, it is still your company both, but legally those are two separate legal personalities, right? When we'll be doing your books also, we'll indicate interest payment as an expense. So you remember, Kai, you finance this purchase through a loan, okay? You furnish the apartment. Now, all these things are purely legal. When you're sending back the money and when you're doing your books, there's a possibility that you want to make profit, technically make profit for several months, maybe even up 2 or 3 years, depending on your level of investment. Now, you're perfectly within the bounds of the law, because in our job, we are on the side of the investor. We will not, what is it? We do tax avoidance, but not tax evasion. So we help you avoid taxes if you can avoid in a very legal way. So that's one way that we'll do it. But I want to mention something else. If you decide, for example, to also in setting up the company, you could decide to set it up as a foreign company, and that's a decision that some companies decide to make. If it's a big corporate, we represented a corporate that was a public listed company, so it wasn't possible for them to set up here as a company because it is publicly owned. It's owned by thousands of people, right? In such cases, we register them here in Kenya as a foreign company. What that means is that it is almost a mirror image. Whatever the registration was in the US is exactly the same in Kenya. The advantage that they have is that they have ease of flexibility of making decisions. They don't have to duplicate their boards. But the challenge with that is that the tax that they would pay would be 37.5% of their net profit.
Because they're foreign.
Because they're foreign, yeah.
Okay.
I want to mention one more very important thing for Americans, right? Again,
Foreigners. Let's say foreigners.
Foreigners, yeah. No. Foreigners, but this is specifically with
specific
respect
for Americans.
US, exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Now, Kenya has double taxation agreements with different countries, right? Unfortunately, we don't have a double taxation agreement between Kenya and the US. It doesn't exist. We have it with Canada, we have it with the UAE, we have it with several countries, right? But you don't have it between Kenya and the US. Now, this is a disadvantage, and this is important, drawing from what you said. The US will follow you anywhere in the world, you know? So you don't have that benefit, unfortunately. Now, if you don't get the right professionals, you may end up paying exorbitant fees in taxes. So you may pay taxes in Kenya and also in the US, you know? Now, how we come and help you deal with this is that in the absence of double taxation agreement, there is a mechanism between Kenya and the US called tax credits applications, right? So, and again, this was structured at the very beginning, and that's why we don't look at it as purely company and corporation, but investment structuring. So this would enable you to structure it in a way that enables you to benefit from that tax credit. So, for example, if you pay taxes in Kenya, we would structure it in a way that then you get a credit in the US. So that when you go back to the US, you say, but I paid $50,000 in Kenya. Can that be a credit to your taxes in the US, you know?
As an expense.
Yeah. So we've been able to structure that for you. Secondly, again, now this is for foreigners, but also it also applies to the US. When you set up your investment in Kenya, we are also able to have that company be certified specifically as an investor. Okay, beyond just registration, have a certificate termed as an investor. The automatic advantage that this then has, and remember, that's really my master's in investor-state relations, is that you automatically benefit from any existing bilateral investment treaties between the two countries. And so therefore, if there should ever be a dispute between you as an American citizen operating in Kenya and the tax authority or the county government or any government body in Kenya, they would look at you differently because of that bilateral investment treaty that exists. So you automatically get some protection because your countries have negotiated. There's, for example, one thing called Most Favored Nation Treaty, or such kind of international treaties. Essentially, they would require you to get the same level of protection that you would have gotten in U.S. courts in Kenya. That is because your company has been certified as an investor, and therefore you have a benefit that has been negotiated by the bilateral agreement between Kenya and the US, or Canada and the US for any kind of foreigner. And so in terms of structuring, we're able to put in place all that, again, because we think of it in the whole investment journey.
I have a question regarding that.
Yes.
As you know, here as well as America is a huge melting pot. So there's a lot of citizens, Americans, that are dual citizenships.
Yes.
Have you ever dealt with somebody and said, it's better to use your, I don't know, South American or
Yes.
Colombian nationality, even though you live in America? Have you guys recommended file your taxes as with your Colombian nationality?
100%. In fact, we actually have a good number of such cases. Sometimes we don't even have dual nationalism. We have dual passports in the same country. I'll give you an example. We have some clients from Bermuda. Now, Bermuda is a territory of the UK. Bermudan citizens have two passports: a passport for Bermuda and passport from the UK. They go to the UK and then they get it. Now, when they come to the country, we're able to assess and look which is the best passport for this kind of investment, which is the best passport with which to get a work permit, for example. So for expediency and to move it faster, I would recommend let us use your UK passport. Well, at the end of the day, they're UK citizens, right? But let's use the UK passport because it is easy. It is very easy for the Kenyan government to they're very familiar with the UK system, right? But they're not very familiar with the Bermuda system because it's really, really far, So we've had such cases. We've also had cases where people are traveling, Just yesterday we were advising some clients who have a Somali passport and a UK passport, right? Now, we advise them in terms of traveling, this is the best passport to use. In terms of investment, this is the best passport to use. If you have a Tanzanian passport and you have an American passport, in terms of investing in Kenya, I would advise you to use a Tanzanian passport. Why? Because, for example, if you're getting your work permit as a Tanzanian national, you don't pay issuance fees. So you automatically save about $4,000, because of using your East African passport, But then, if you ever have to do fundraising for you as a private equity, let's use the American passport. Why? Because then you'll be easily trusted by private equity funds, So yeah, we have those cases. They're not hypothetical, but they're very live and it's on a case-by-case basis. Yes.
Very good. You have a question?
No, go ahead.
I have a question. To go back onto real estate, because we're mostly a real estate type of situation. This might be a controversial question. Usually in America, it's kind of like you get a real estate agent, they show you around, blah, 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 But here, it seems like there's no need for a real estate agent. What do you guys think about that? Do you feel that do you need a real estate agent? Do you feel it's very important to have a lawyer? Do you feel it's very important to have both? And that's a question. Yeah.
I see. You want to take it?
So I'll answer it in twofold. Number one, you definitely need a lawyer because remember, when you are investing in real estate, the developer or the vendor or the person now who is selling the project or the apartment to you has a lawyer. So that lawyer is not meant to serve you. It's meant to protect the interest of his client. Now, for you who is a prospective purchaser, you need to find your own lawyer who would help you go through the entire transaction so that if that lawyer decides to play fishy in the agreement and trying to protect his client, who is the vendor, at least you have a lawyer who can hold him to account, discuss the clauses in detail, because, it's very easy to assume just because you know the English language, you'll be able to understand a legal document. No, so the legal ramification these clauses have sometimes are far-reaching. And they're structured in such a way that they usually sometimes, introduce legalese. Those are legal terminologies. And they carry their own weight. And if misinterpreted, well, it can be quite catastrophic for you, losing your investments just because you didn't properly go through a certain clause which ought to have been properly read or understood. So it can cost you big time. Of course, the lawyer would not only help you in reviewing the agreement, but would also advise you on the viability of the project. Some developers have the balls to go around, getting a property, buying a land, but then it's charged by a bank. So what happens is he owns the land, yes, but then remember, this project is being financed by a bank. Yes, so the property is charged to a bank. Now, and in most cases, they will never disclose that. So it's you now to undertake, through your lawyer, what we call a due diligence. So you have to do proper due diligence. That is now investigating the title to this property, looking at the historical aspect of this property, at least 5-10 years back dating. You also need to look at whether this property has any court cases, whether it's has been subjected to a judicial process, whether there's a question of ownership wrangle in court. Maybe some properties are owned by families and they're subject to succession, and some would want to transfer, some would want to keep it. So you would not want to invest in a project where there's a court case that is pending. Thirdly, you would also want to know whether this particular project is indeed one that is viable. Yes, so we look at ROI, the rate of investment return. If you invest $100,000, what is the rental income you're looking at? Is it viable? This property sits on a lease. How long is the lease? Is it due to expire? You would also be looking at the amenities surrounding that particular project. You can see it for yourself, and if it's in a deserted land or a deserted area, of course, income would definitely be questionable. But if it's in a nice prime area, of course, you can definitely invest in that. And finally, you'll also have to see the track record of this developer. Who is this developer? Has he completed similar projects in the past? Has he failed other prospective purchasers in the past? So you also need to look at the developer through the eye and see whether this individual who is now undertaking such a mega project is worth trusting.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So here, that's the issue that we have, right? You're looking at this wonderful place, Westlands in particular. Really hot market. So when you actually get on the starting point of a development, you actually have possession of maybe a top unit. There seems to be a sense of urgency from the developer that you need to get this done. When it comes with writing the formal letter, and then we're going to the due diligence, from my experience, because it's such a new property, they don't have all their paperwork done. What do you guys do when the 14 days are up? How do you guys communicate to the property or the developers that we still haven't received this type of paperwork, this type of paperwork, and also keep hold of that top unit that we had?
It's a good question. So as to why the developers would hurry you up, well, it goes without saying, some developers are not liquid, to be frank with you. Some hugely rely on off-plan purchases. So when they do off-plan sales, it is that money they will use now to undertake the construction. So you holding on to the money simply means you are delaying yourself and other prospective purchasers from that property being completed. So, and it's one of the things we usually check. We try to look at the liquidity of this developer, and that speaks back again to the track record. Do they have the requisite funds to undertake such mega projects to start with? Or is it a first timer? Will he blunder? Will he deliver? Those are questions you would definitely ask yourself. As to the question on, whether how you can hold on to a prime location apartment that you just identified, yes, it's doable so long as we are able to get the letter of offer, because it usually starts with the letter of offer. But before even they send you the letter of offer, they will definitely take you to the side and show you the structural drawings, how the apartment looks like. And if you are contented with it, then what I also recommend and advise people to do is always have the floor plan attached to the main agreement, because sometimes they play fishy games. So if it was measuring some few steps, or it was a certain square meters, they would play with that number, so that during completion, when you're supposed to move in and you're granted a certificate of occupation for you to occupy your premises, you realize, oh my God, wait a minute, I think this place is quite small than what I identified. Yeah, so you always make sure that the entire floor plan of where your apartment sits and its dimension is attached or annexed to the main agreement, so that later on you can bring on your engineers or your surveyors or something and bring them on board, and they can do the measurements for you, just to check indeed if they have complied with the same dimensions.
So you are confirming that when we are in the due diligence process, and there's, 14 business days that you have, that you can talk to the lawyers of the developers and say, hey, you know what? We need an extension. Am I right with saying that?
Yeah, sure. Why not? This is not a standard, I would say, provision of the law, or it's not a law by itself. It's on, arrangement between the parties. So there's no strict regulation governing this. So it's how you calm down and agree. So what happens from my experience is, the timeline would always be determined by the amount of money you deposit or you are willing to deposit. So if you are a purchaser who is willing to deposit 20 or 30%, of course you will not get the best services as compared to a purchaser who is willing to deposit 60 or 70% of the purchase price. So to that person, of course, they will give them some sort of leeway. He would get definitely some better treatment. But on the question of you asking for extension, yes, you have every right. Especially people buy time once they execute the letter of offer. So once you do the letter of offer, and by the way, legally speaking, a letter of offer does not constitute a legally binding contract.
It's the sales agreement.
It's the sales agreement which matters.
So is it safe to give them a deposit at the point of the offer letter?
No. So what happens is this. They prepare for you the letter of offer based on the terms and conditions you had agreed upon, and then you execute the letter of offer. Now, the letter of offer contains the bank details of the vendor or the developer's bank account. Now, based on how you had agreed upon and the terms of the letter of offer, you would be required to deposit a percentage of it. That now would enable them to instruct their lawyers to prepare for you the sale agreement. Remember, the sale agreement will not be sent to you if you had not made any commitment or made any payments.
So it's okay to give them that first payment?
Yes.
Okay.
So you would give them that, and then they will give you the sale agreement. But you see, that amount can always be reimbursed if you decide to walk out of the transaction.
Oh, okay. Because when you said it was non-binding,
Yes.
I got worried that you're saying that your deposit.
You
may
can
not-
always walk out of the transaction.
Okay.
So long as, remember, if you don't sign the sale agreement, then you will always get your money back. But if you sign the sale agreement, then you would have to forfeit some 10%
Okay.
of the deposit
So after
that you made.
deposit.
Yes.
So when we're talking about 20%, 50%, a lot of people can't do that. Okay, a lot of people can't do 50%. Okay, so let's just be realistic here that someone's going to do 20%, maybe 10%. Ryan, can we say 10% as well?
Well, most developers,
Right.
the deposit's going to be true.
Can we do an initial holding fee of 20%, just like not the 20%, but just an initial fee, just to show commitment? Maybe hypothetically 10,000 or something like that. It's not the full 20%. It may not be the full 10%, but could that work with these developers and show good faith that we are serious about this? We want to lock this in, and this is during the formal letter offer that's leading to the sales agreement.
Good question. So what happens is, in most cases, they would require you to deposit 100,000 shillings, which is roughly around $700, $800. So that is a booking fee.
Right.
It's called a booking fee. Okay. Now the booking fee simply shows that you are serious and you are willing to undertake this particular purchase, and that they would definitely give you some time frame to put your house in order. Of course, the booking fee would be deductible from the purchase price, but the fact that you are, indicating to them, listen, I'm serious, I'm ready to commit this amount of money. So that's what they usually require. So if it's an apartment or a unit in a very prime area, so they always advise people, listen, just lock in this. Yeah, we'll just lock it out and say, listen, it's been taken by Ryan. Just deposit 100,000 Kenyan shillings, and after a week or two, then we can do it for you, the letter of offer, and then we can start negotiations from there.
Okay. I appreciate your guys' time. Last question from me is, a lot of people in the comments when we start talking about land have a lot of things to say as far as getting scammed, land is contested, it's ancestral land, change of use, things like that. So could you just speak generally to some of the risks or issues and things that you guys do to avoid all these hazards that we're hearing about with purchase of land, especially for foreigners?
Okay, so it's true, and many people get scammed. It's true. Land is an emotive topic or discussion in this country, and it's one of the assets that is highly valuable as well. So if you get the right land and you get the right experts helping you to manage or govern, or rather seal the deal with respect to acquiring that land, then I suppose you should be the luckiest man. But it's not that easy. It's not that easy. We have instances where we've had people who work in certain departments in state agencies, the ministries of land, the registries, in certain instances have colluded with fraudsters to defraud individuals of their investments. It happens. But at the same time, we are a country that is governed by the rule of law. So every problem has a redress, and there's a way to redress it. But before you put yourself or drag yourself into such a mud, the first thing ideally would be get a lawyer on board. Once you have a lawyer on board, then the first and the simplest thing to do would be to pay a site visit. Because you don't want to buy thin air. You want to buy a property that is somewhere that you can touch and see. Then once we get hold of where the property is located, we will know which relevant registries or Ministry of Land or departments for that matter is in charge of that particular jurisdiction. And we will know the title deed, which now of course is the second step, identify the seller. You need to identify who the seller is. So how do you identify them? You get a copy of the title deed, And then you look at the name which appears on the title deed. And then what happens is you tell them now, produce your national identity card or your passport to prove that this is indeed you, before you even investigate the title itself. So once you have identified who the seller is, now at least you are fine. You are dealing with the right individual who owns the property. If it is a company, we will do a company search to see who are the directors of this company, who are the shareholders as of that particular date. Not 5 years ago, that date. We get a picture. Okay, if it's a company, then we'll know where their offices are, we pay them a visit, and we start now, getting a hold of the title and now sending it for an official search. Now, there are two types of searches. There's what we call physical search, and we have what we call the e-search, electronic search. Now, when you do a physical search, one thing it helps you with is you get what we call the green book. Okay, it gives you an aspect or an understanding of the history of this property. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Who were the individuals who were owning this property 60, 70 years ago? Under what circumstances were it being transferred? Was this a government land to start with? Was this a private land owned by individuals? So you get a full understanding. It's a big file. You'll have to, deal with a number of pages, perusing them. And that's where your lawyer definitely comes in, because he's able to understand who the individuals, or rather how these transactions were happening back then, and whether they were in compliance with the law. If you do an electronic search, it's a one-page document. What electronic search literally means that it's the physical file which has been deduced into a one-page summary of what this property's history is about. So the e-search only talks about the name of the proprietor, the measurement of the land. It also talks about whether it's freehold, leasehold, the remaining period of the lease. It talks about whether there's also any encumbrance. Encumbrance means if there is a mortgage or a charge by a bank or something, or any lending institution. It also talks about the rates and rent which is payable. That is annual, monies that you pay to the government. If it's a leasehold, you pay rates and rent. If it's a freehold, you only pay rates. So it talks about the amount that ideally you'd be paying, annually.
On those two searches, would that reflect if I see that families have disputes about land and succession? Would you be able to identify those issues at that point? Or how would you identify those issues if there's succession issues?
Good question. Now, how would you identify a property that is subject to dispute? What we'll do is very simple. We will read the land reference number, the LR number. So the title deed has an LR number or an IR number. Nowadays, because of the new land regime, most properties in Nairobi and its surroundings are being converted into block. So they're quietly phasing out the LR numbers into block numbers. So we will run a search on Kenyan law. Now, Kenyan law is a website by the government, is where you get all the case laws, pending cases, cases that have been adjudicated over the years. It's like an archive. So every case filed in any competent jurisdiction in this country, court of competent jurisdiction, or even a tribunal which deals with land, have their database captured in Kenyan law. So when you search the LR number, automatically, if it pops up, then you take an interest on that case, try to see whether it cross-references what you have on the title deed, and then try to read and understand. Because if you have the title deed and it's a genuine original title deed, definitely you will get to see who the proprietors or the owners are, and you will see who the parties of this particular case are. So it gives you an understanding. Yes.
Ryan, let me say something real quick on your question of frauding, being scammed. In the unlikely event and the unfortunate event that you have been scammed, because that is a possibility and you're watching this, We hope not, but all hope is not lost. You can still reach out to your lawyer, you can still reach out to us, and it is still possible within the litigation system in Kenya for you to realize back your money. Many times it's difficult, but we've also seen that some of these scammers are dumb people, you know. So we've actually been involved in cases where we have successfully recovered what perceived to have been, scammed previously. So all hope is not lost. Usually they would tell you that if you come to the country, we'll arrest you, we'll send immigration people to deport you. They will tell you things like we are connected very heavily in government. We know people. Usually they will try to scare you, but you don't need to be scared. Reach out to your lawyer. In fact, to commence litigation here, you don't even have to come to Kenya physically. The system in Kenya and the judiciary is fully digitized. So you can easily proceed with your litigation from the US. You will never have to come to Kenya. Even during testifying, you will never have to come to Kenya. We conduct all our court sessions virtually.
Oh, wow.
So it will be possible for you to attend every court session from the comfort of your home.
Wow.
Any document that you prepare could easily be signed digitally in the US, and then you send it. In rare cases, would require you to appear before a notary public or a lawyer in the US to sign some documents and send them back to us, but still digitally. So in the unlikely event that has happened to you, all hope is not lost. It is still possible for you to recover. Just reach out to a reputable lawyer and they will be very happy to help you.
They answered my question.
Okay.
That was it?
Yeah, I had a few. Yeah.
Great minds think alike.
So I just wanted to thank both of you guys so much for giving out a lot of free information to everybody. Hopefully, you guys get some people reaching out, especially I'm trying to tell you, there's a lot of things that you run into that you'll need legal help from, and I'm realizing that as well, and I know Kai agrees.
Yes.
And so I think this was a great conversation. I thank you again for both of your time, and I'm actually interested, maybe we'll come out to some of the events or something that you guys do, and I'll talk to you guys offline some more, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey.
Visit us when you come to Kenya.
Yeah.